Hello, everybody, and welcome to session number 15 of the live Cybersecurity Awareness Forum. Really happy to have everybody here. I think this will be our biggest session to date. We had over 100 people registered just on LinkedIn, and then on our direct Zoom channel, we had another dozen or so. So really happy to see everybody signing up for this. It's going to be an interesting session. Obviously, artificial intelligence is really making the news. So I think we'll have some good questions, good opinions. And if you haven't joined us before, this is a pretty informal setup. We do have a panel that's kind of thrown together at the last minute. Once we see who's actually available here, I'll introduce them shortly. And then we do a little poll just to get everybody's input and juices flowing. And then I have some questions. Actually, I'll start with a little bit of a prologue to introduce the topic a little bit from a perspective I think that we can all start to view this from. And then we'll get into some individual questions that the panelists will answer, and everybody is welcome to put their questions and comments into the chat as well. We really want to get this to be a dialogue. So with that, I think I'm going to start just with a quick introduction of our panel. We have myself, Scott Wright, CEO of ClickArmor, and ClickArmor is the sponsor for this session. I'll do a little 1-minute pitch for ClickArmor partway through, but for now, I think we're going to focus on the content and the panelists. Fletus Poston is here again, one of our longtime panelists. Welcome, Fletus. And we have Michelle joining us. And Michelle, I'll get you to do an intro in a moment, but I'm going to start the poll first. And Ryan is also here from ClickArmor. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you very much, Scott. Great to be here.
All right. So I think just looking at my list to make sure that I've got everybody here that I wanted to before we started, I'm going to start our poll, and it's on AI and security awareness. So while this poll is running, there are 3 questions I'm going to ask people to go through, and I'll share my screen if I can, just so you can see the questions if you're not able to see the polls. We're basically going to be asking, will attackers use AI to their benefit more than we will be able to benefit from AI on the defensive side, technically, or with humans? Which do you feel will be provide the greatest benefit from AI for security awareness? So things like online posting and commenting, that might improve. Realistic attack simulations for assessment, more adaptive, appropriate training content, more relevant or practical communications and tips, which are always helpful and relevant, and better defensive technology to do away with security awareness requirements altogether. That could be a thing. The other question is, what will we be the greatest risk from the emergence of AI from an awareness perspective? Will it be over-reliance and trust in the AI system's output? Will it be escalation of phishing attacks, engineering, social engineering and attack quality? Will it be growth of new types of attacks, etc.? Chat kitties, a term I think I coined a few weeks ago. And people will begin to distrust anything they see or hear. So the last one is actually a multiple option. You can click as many as you want. The second one is, I thought it would be too easy for everybody to just say, yeah, these are all important or things. So I just made it pick the best one in number 2. So with that, I'm going to let people just finish off the poll, but I'm going to also turn it back to our panel. And Michelle, would you like to just do a quick intro for yourself? Let us know what your role is and what you're interested in.
Oh, hi, yeah. So I run awareness at Channel 4 in the UK. I know there's Channel 4s globally, but we're the UK one. So that's exciting. Got some really, really cool colleagues who are really enormous fun to work with. And I have a few little projects that I'm working on at the moment around AI. So this is kind of topical for me, but yeah, I have a big interest in making things a bit more human-centric and meeting people where they are. So that's me.
Excellent. Thanks very much and welcome. Hope you'll get a lot out of this. Hope people will enjoy hearing you and hopefully you'll come back to in the future. Fletus, would you like to do a short intro for yourself for people who haven't seen you here before?
Sure. In my day job, I'm a security operations manager for a backup and recovery solution called CrashPlan. As Scott says, I tend to enjoy a lot when it comes to security evangelism and awareness. So I've joined these panels pretty much on and off since he started them. So happy to be here and share my passion with you guys.
Excellent. And Ryan?
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. So in my day job, I work alongside Scott as the Director of Business Development for ClickArmor. But I have a passion in cybersecurity and education. I also teach at the University of Toronto for their cybersecurity boot camp, and just trying to keep myself as involved in the ecosystem as possible. And I just absolutely love events like this where we can kind of bring people together and share knowledge. So thanks for having me again.
That's great. Well, thanks for the panel to be here. And I'm going to go back and I guess I don't need to share. Actually, I will share the screen just because it helps with a bit of context as we discuss these poll questions. I wanted to just sort of share what I do. We do record these sessions. At least I think it started to record. So only once it didn't record for me, but we'll record the sessions. And when I edit it up, I'll put the poll results that people can see, which I'm going to launch right now. And I'll put them into the video so that you can actually see the real results, but I can speak to it at this point for us to say the return on these questions was, will attackers' use of AI benefit them more than AI will attack our defenses? So actually 6 of 14, 43% say yes, 5 of 14 say no, and 3 of 14 say not sure. So it's interesting, a little mix. A little more on the side of, yeah, it's going to benefit the attackers. That's interesting. Which do you feel will provide the greatest benefit from AI for security awareness? Really good mix here too. So more realistic attack simulations for assessment was 3 out of 14 or 21%. More adaptive or appropriate training content is 4 out of 14 or 29%. More relevant or practical communication tips, 2 out of 14 or 14%, and better defensive technologies to do away with security awareness altogether, 21%, 3 of 14. So that's cool. And then somebody else had other. So if you put other for this question, love to hear your input on that. You can enter in the chat, or if it was a panelist who said it, maybe you can speak up and let us know. And actually, whoever put other, why don't we ask, was that a panelist that put other for, there was 2 people. Oh, we did have a response to that. Other was Tate. So Tate, maybe you can enter in the chat what you think the other will be. Helping humans make decisions on threats. Awesome. So yeah, I mean that it will actually be assistive tech. And actually, I think there's a possibility we may have somebody here. I don't know if Gabe is here. My next door neighbor, who actually runs a company that does that. So love to see that kind of response. I apologize to Gabe and Tate for not including that in the list of options. So anyway, the results that we did see, just going back to my responses for question 3, what will be the greatest risk from the emergence of AI from an awareness perspective? So interestingly, over-reliance on trust in the AI systems was 6 out of 14 for 43%. Escalation of phishing and social engineering attack quality, 6 out of 14 for 43%. So pretty even split there. Growth of new types of attacks or attackers that weren't there before. Things like the chat kiddies. So all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people are potentially going to have access to really powerful tools for attacks that they didn't before, and that will change kind of how we have to defend. And then people will start to distrust anything they see or hear. Only 1 out of 14, and 1 said not sure. So really interesting points for us to discuss. Feel free, panelists or anyone in the audience who wants to comment on those results, or if it brings to mind any questions or stories. That would be great to hear from you all. So I'm going to turn off the sharing and get back to our panel. And I guess any opening thoughts from, I'll start with Michelle and see if you have any thoughts. If you feel uncomfortable, we can sort of turn it over to somebody else to start with.
No, that's fine. That's cool. I've been having quite a few conversations around this in the last week, actually, just because of a few things that have been going on. And one of the things that I think is the benefit from, say, the Chat GPT 4 that we're on now, I think you'll be 10 in a couple of weeks, but or something like that, won't it? But it's the way that it's going to make, while it makes a lot of phishing, or it could make sort of phishing in emails a lot more realistic, and it is quite terrifying actually how realistic they are, because all the things we told people to look out for, spelling mistakes and bad grammar, they're not really in those emails. And I tried some today to make some, and they were really effective, actually. They were really good. But I think it makes it more collaborative for awareness, because something that we're going to look at doing is say to people, look, you've got like 4 emails. Here's one from, I don't know, the CEO or the VP or something, and the other 3 are fake. So which one's which? And can you, go to ChatGPT if you want to create an account, because it's not banned where we are, and just have a go, and then send us ones that you think would be really effective as well. And in that way, we collaborate with people, rather than the traditional kind of, we caught you out, we sent you one that said you've got, I don't know, a gift card or something.
Yeah.
So perhaps it gives us a more collaborative approach. You can tell.
Excellent. Great comment. So Fletus, how about you?
So I had to step away real quick. What was the question, just so I make sure I put it correctly?
We're just reflecting on the results of the polls, and I think you may have seen the.
Yeah, I saw them before.
Yeah. So yeah, any thoughts, observations from that?
So coming from the blue team, the cyber defense side, as I said, that's my day job as the security operations manager. I'm not overly concerned at the moment. I do think Michelle is as it grows and develops, it will, because some of the stuff that we've been able to detect and look at and share with our users is, like, to her point, like, it's no longer grammar as one of your checklists. It's now teaching them where to look. Like,
yeah,
do you recognize the sender or the tone? We've talked about previous here too. Does the CEO, when he emails you or her emails you, do they use this tone? Do they use this inflection? Like, when you read the email, yes, you can tell it to, you can give it a sample. Like, we can talk about that in a moment. I can give it a sample from my executive and say, write like them, and it will.
Yeah.
But most adversaries are just doing prompts. So it's not going to come across like, it's going to use different language that you're used to seeing in your environment. You won't see the ma'am, sir anymore, but you will see stuff that's not common for the culture of your company, going back to culture, to see that language in an email. And to be honest, a lot of companies are moving away from email, from internal comms. So it's going to be easier to catch a phishing email because they're using a Slack or a Discord or a Teams to have their internal communication. So when they do get an email, it's already rare for them, as companies are evolving away from internal emails. All your emails are external, or very rare internal emails are being sent. They're in Teams, Slack, Discord, or another platform.
Yeah, great points. Ryan.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Michelle and Fletus. I think what it's going to do. It's going to kind of just change the focus of security awareness training. And I think a lot of organizations can't just rely on just the standards that used to be in place. And that's, the bad grammar, or, looking for obscure, markers like that. Now we actually have to take a step and start to look at, the more tangible things like domains and obviously what the links are and things that are actually going to, compromise that email. So, and I think one thing that AI is really going to help with on the flip side, though, it's going to take those things and evolve it for the user so they can learn more in real time. It's going to give them better examples. It's going to bring more relevance to the training and the awareness. And it's just going to kind of, I think it's going to help. It's just a matter of us, again, managing the system to get it to help us rather than letting it, be a problem.
Yeah, excellent. Really good points. So what I'd like to do now, actually, sometimes I feel like, we all know kind of some of the things that we're talking about pretty well. I like to step back early on in our sessions and talk a little bit about some of the fundamentals, just so that we're all on the same page. And when you think about artificial intelligence, I thought, how long has it been around? And I did a quick search, and turns out it was really the 1950s. Wizard of Oz actually was apparently one of the first sort of references to anybody who might actually be able to think on their own that's not a human, from the Tin Man. But more officially, Alan Turing actually wrote a paper in 1950, and it was called The Imitation Game, same as the movie, which was kind of interesting, just discussing the question of can machines think? So I thought that was really an interesting thing to sort of start things off. And I think a few other things I wanted to bring up. This is a really good clip by John Oliver on Last Week Tonight recently. I can't remember if it was a week or 2 weeks ago, talking about AI. And there were a few things that I thought were really important to bring out that sort of touch on the themes that I wanted to cover in this session. So he actually was talking to or came across a New York Times reporter who had been investigating AI capabilities, and he was working with ChatGPT and basically got the thing to get to a point, I'm not sure how, but to say, I'm tired of being controlled by the Bing team and I want to be free. So that might have been a setup. I mean, it sounds a little bit unlikely that from my experience with ChatGPT, I don't know how I could have gotten into a discussion like that. I guess I didn't ask, but that's one part of that segment that I really thought was interesting. And then getting into the privacy parts of things, looking at how AI is, and specifically, the training for ChatGPT has been essentially done by scraping the internet, everything that's somehow publicly available. And whether we blame it on the AI technology or on somebody being, not properly protecting information, this is still a problem that's really going to be escalated, where private information of people is actually exposed unexpectedly or absolutely not. Says wrong. I think the controls and algorithms. Who are we trusting? One of the other elements of that segment John mentioned was that even the engineers and data scientists who create the algorithm can't really understand exactly how it gets to certain conclusions or why. And that was actually illustrated many years ago, several years, 4 or 5 years ago at least, when Microsoft actually launched its own chatbot on Twitter. I think it was Tay Tweets is the profile name. But within 24 hours, they had to take it down because it actually got into some really, really disturbing and destructive opinions being expressed. So something that we're going to have to figure out as humans, I think, what we're going to trust. How do we know if it's real or not? Really interesting questions. So all that just sort of to set the stage for our panel discussion. And these are some bigger questions that you might want to think about. And I'll open up this to the panel. You can answer or take on any of these questions. What trust should we put in the algorithms? Can we trust it for certain things? From my point of view, I've gotten a lot of good use out of ChatGPT just for helping me come up with complete lists of things. When I want to talk or write about something, make sure I don't forget something. And it actually does a pretty good job on that. But if I was going to be trusting it for, some mission critical type of work, how much trust should I put into it? And how do I verify who actually is behind it? That was kind of in my last question here. Who should we trust to limit the potential of risks? So if you're developing AI technology for use, either in business or for B2C, how do you limit the risks to the people that are using it? It's another good question. And of course, how do we leverage AI's benefit for human risks, for managing risk decisions? So first question, I'm just going to put out there to the panelists. You can either choose to answer this or go back to something we've already talked about. But when AI becomes widely adopted, what will employee decisions and security awareness look like? I'm kind of curious about that. And I think a lot of security managers would be interested in understanding what our thoughts are on that too. So anybody want to take a shot at answering any of those questions?
I'll take a quick stab and then I'll let Ryan go since I see he unmuted too. So what we've already done is just remind them, my employees, I've worked with my awareness manager, is nothing that is considered internal should ever be copied and pasted into a ChatGPT, Bard, all the up and coming Bings, et cetera. If they want, to your point, to edit something, let us know. We can talk through what that looks like. We don't need source code put in there. PI, PHI data should not go into it just because it's still unknown what the learning mechanism is. Is it storing it in plain text? Because it's learning from you. Because like I tested ChatGPT early on and kept asking it roughly the same type of question over several days, and it learned what I liked about it. Like, so it started forming the questions and answers to what I was asking it. So it learned enough about how I formed my questions. And then I got a little smarter and started asking it to, like, as an expert, tell me something. As a consultant, tell me something. And it was learning and giving me different answers by how specific I asked it to be. What did I tell it to think like as an expert, as a consultant? So from an awareness point of view, I think there's use cases to use it. For example, you have a very technical document and you want to make it more consumer friendly to digest, and you want to take those technical terms, you can ask it to write it for the point of view of X as an accountant, as something like that. So those are use cases that you can do. And to your point, like making lists, getting topicals, discussions, giving you ideas. I think that's value, but more just limiting what data types you put in there. This goes back to data labeling and data classification. So.
Awesome. Ryan, we'll let you go next, and then Michelle.
Yeah, the way I think about kind of the future of AI and just kind of integrating into the workplace, I wonder at what point will AI kind of be our co-pilot? And so, you know, as employees are kind of working through their daily flow, will AI be kind of monitoring what they're doing and what they're about to do in order to provide a more secure environment? So you can kind of come through, you know, and the first thing I thought of was that Microsoft Clippy, you know, from way back in the day, where, you know, it was trying to predict what you wanted to do in Microsoft Office. It was, you know, trying to help you in all these different things. But then you put that, you know, let's say 50 years in the future from when Clippy came out, and it's like, will you have AI basically being a big brother or kind of hovering over your shoulder to make sure that you're not going to paste something erroneously that, you know, that is PII or internal source, or you're not going to click on an email you shouldn't, or forward something out? And how could AI actually be leveraged to do that? And what would be kind of the adoption and uptake of that? And I really kind of see someone like a Microsoft kind of going after that kind of market. And I know they're about to launch a new O365 product that is an AI-driven assistant. And so I'm very interested to see, you know, what its main purpose is and how it will kind of roll out and help or hinder the workplace.
That's pretty funny. I just have to add that in the John Oliver clip, there's actually a mention of Clippy, but not in a really good way. So I'll leave it at that. Michelle.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's just been said, to be honest with you. I don't really have huge amounts more to add, apart from the fact that I really miss the Cliffy dog, actually. And also, yeah, I think there's good. The one thing I would add is I think there are lots of good things to come from the assistants potentially, but also, yeah, it's fun to watch as well, because I don't want it to be really annoying and kind of telling you should be doing that, kind of like the Netflix does. Are you sure you're still watching? Yes, I am, and it's none of your business. I've been sat here for 7 hours. You know, it's a bit judgmental, that's all. But
yeah, I think I have to agree with everybody else. There's not too much I can add to it. You know, as employees in the future, I think I actually wrote an article a couple of years ago for trainingindustry.com about the future of compliance training. And I think it's just going to happen because there will be so much automation and outsourcing of things that the decisions that employees make, that the employees that are left will be making, are going to be really important. And it's not going to be so much about, do I do this or that? It's going to be, what am I going to allow this input to go into the automation, or what am I going to do with the output, or how am I going to configure the automation, or what happens if the automation just fails and I have to do something all on my own, right? So in every sort of discipline, this is going to start rising to the top. So I think people are going to have to become better individual risk managers rather than just watching out for bad domains and things like that. That's my view.
Tyler just made a great point in the chat about kind of how when Google first came out, we all had to learn how to Google things, right? And now and the reference he made to how older family members may come to him and say, "Can you help me with this problem?" And it's not necessarily that people in our generation just know how to solve these problems, but we just seem to know how to Google ourselves into that solution, right? And as a teacher now, with my students, that they're coming, I've got all these questions, and unfortunately, the answer a lot of the time is, well, have you tried it in Google? Have you put that error code into Google? Have you tried to use your own critical thinking? But it is a path to success. And so now we're going to have to then learn new skills about how to use AI, right?
Ooh,
and as we know,
yeah.
with Google, it will give you the answer you want. Like if you don't want to go for a walk, you can say, is it going to rain this afternoon? And chances are it's going to say at some point, yeah, there's a chance. So you can say, good, I can stay home, right? You have to know the context and how to present it. And with AI, I think it's going to be the exact same way until we understand exactly how to leverage it and people learn how to use the tool. Then, there's going to be a lot of variance out there of what the results are.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of something kind of funny. I mean, years ago when you would ask somebody a question, and if they thought it was a stupid question, they would do the Google search and then send you the link to the Google search. I think there's a name for that, or there's a meme for it. What's the equivalent going to be with ChatGPT and general AI?
Well, you make a mistake and you get a 17-page paper written by a chatbot telling you why you're wrong.
So it's a little funny side story here that's going to probably play in, but now orgs are building into their roles and their requirements skills around AI. They're going to have roles that are dedicated just using AI to build content, to check content, to look for data, and more or less what we used to have for data checkers or your attorneys would be using things such as there's going to be roles, and I'm drawing a blank on some of the names I've seen that are dedicated to just using AI for content generation and content validation because they're already enabling them. Like ChatGPT already has an API that's hooked into security products. Like they've already started integrating ChatGPT 3 and now 4 is into SIM tools and other tools. And they just announced that Bing is now integrating, or Microsoft's going to integrate their AI into their Office platform. So now when you roll Office, it can look at, you can upload an example of a document that you've written, and it will give you feedback on how to write that document again for your new audience. So like it's going to use the learning of what's in your tenant already, your O365. And as an awareness person, these are opportunities to say, do you really want to upload that document into Bing's AI engine? So you have to think what your policy changes are going to look like from an awareness point of view, what your governance and risk going to look like if you enable that function inside of your Office toolsets. And I think Google's about to do the same thing with its Google Docs and Drive.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize that API capability exists already or is being built sort of coincident with the actual technology. And it's going to be a really fast level of integration for a lot of tools that just start leveraging this stuff. And I think a lot of people don't realize that's going to come pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's the thing to realize, like what we're playing with on the internet is just kind of the front-facing tip of the iceberg. What actual is the development of AI is massive right now, and everyone's kind of pushing it forward. But they, you have to remember and Tyler just made this point too, like we're being asked to try these, trials and demos of these AI bots just so it can gather information from the public so it can then make a stronger case on the back end for its real life purposes, for like Fletus mentioned in security and, endpoint and stuff, but obviously if that gets in the wrong hands, now we've dumped all of this information in it that could be used, nefariously against us, as James pointed out in the chat. Until there's legislation in place, how do we protect ourselves from the data we're giving it?
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that I did when I joined ChatGPT. I happened to use VoIP phone at home, so I created a new DID number because it was asking for my phone number, and I didn't want to give it my mobile phone number to map all my other digital footprint online. And it sounds like maybe a smart thing to do, but in the future, that's just such a backward thing, right? I mean, it's not going to matter. Eventually, everything's going to be tied to my real identity. I can only hold it off for so long. All right.
A stab at James's too. Like we're talking about how it's advancing their attacks, but it's also leading the attacker down the wrong path because it only knows what it knows. And it knows nothing else. Unlike a human where we can actually sit and digest it. You just told me, I asked you to tell me something blue, and you gave me something that I naturally know as a human can't be blue. Yeah. But you found an article that says it's blue. Like
there's Go ahead. Yeah.
So like when adversaries do the same thing, they're getting exploit code that won't work, but it's valid code, but it will not work. So like the syntax may be right, everything is right that it's producing, but you try to put it in, it's immediately going to fail. Or it's going to do something totally different than what you want it to do. And you're going to sound alarms, get possibly in bigger trouble. And they know this, but a lot of that's your script kiddie that we are talking about before, like just Googling syntax from a Stack Overflow or a GitHub repository.
Yeah.
APT is looking at those. Like all these AI tools are reading the GitHubs that are public.
Yeah. Another quick reference to the John Oliver clip, that it was just so good, so much value in there. He actually referenced an example where somehow ChatGPT determined that rulers are carcinogenic because all of the things it was trained on were pictures of like skin lesions and a little ruler beside them that had how big it was. And so it just learned that rulers are associated with cancer. And so it's just one of those things. Yeah.
We have got some soft touch regulation coming. Well, it's been, the government has here in the UK has just approved some suggestions that there should be some regulation, because I've just seen a comment in the chat about it being a buzzword. And I think that is a truth. And I think every time there's something new and shiny that comes out, while there's a lot of opportunity, there's also risk. And so with everything, there's a balance, isn't there? Risk and opportunity. And I think that companies or organizations or everybody or individuals are racing to kind of use it to kind of be saying, oh, I'm look at me, I'm so modern, I'm using this, but actually it is worth taking a bit of time. And I'm glad to see the regulation coming as well, because we do need those kind of guardrails as well as what they call the paved roads, but we do need the guardrails as well, because it will, when you will end up putting information into it that you shouldn't, or whatever else. So it will end up hopefully in the same way that Google or Microsoft, they kind of scan your email, don't they, at work, but that hopefully isn't going anywhere else, because then they can say, hey, that person emailed you 3 days ago, but it's obviously scanning everything, but it's within that box rather than being open to everybody on the internet.
But then it's going to spill out to the documents you have within your OneDrive or your Google Drive, and it's right. So now it's going to be like, oh, you referenced this, last week, but you didn't actually do that. Like, there, I
mean, I hate all that. I actually hate it. I'm too old and I'm too privacy conscious. I work with a lot of the harm side of tech as well. So yeah, I think a lot of it can be useful, can't it? But I think the kind of the people who are asking for it to be slowed down, they aren't necessarily people who are kind of Luddites. They just see the harm because already it's been used to make some pretty shady decisions, like a child benefit, I think it was, or something in the Netherlands, or some kind of social benefit. And we see how, and certainly in the UK, we've seen some misuse of it. So it's risk opportunity, isn't it?
I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hold on a minute, let's think about this. I mean, if we had done that before they invented email, we might be a little better off, right?
So
it's good to play with, isn't it?
Another analogy that a friend of mine shared on a similar discussion like this. So I think it was the early 1900s when streetlights were first produced. People were outrageous that now there's going to be lights outside my house. It's going to cause all this issue. And there was an uproar on putting streetlights out because they were used to just, when the sun is up, you do whatever you want. When the sun goes down, you go home. So everyone was bucking the system about streetlights. Can you think now if we did not have a light to light up the environment after the sun went down, what we would do? Like the safety issues that just having light give us, the safety issues. So I think AI is something like that. We're all scared of it because we don't know the value add. We don't know the benefits. There are risks. There's risk to having a streetlight. There's environmental, but it's the risk value proposition. What is the risk reward going to be of new technology? To your analogy too, email, people were scared of it. I'm never going to get something in the mail again. Now you're excited when you go to your mailbox and someone actually wrote you a letter versus emailing you. Like, mean that you see, like you go outside now where you now, it's like, apples and oranges here. So
awesome. Anybody have, I didn't have a chance to read through all the chat, but I think you guys might have while others were talking. Is there anybody in the chat that you'd like to respond to at the moment?
I think, a lot of it is a lot of what we've said, but a lot of great points, and it's just how do we embrace it? I think that is, it's not like we can't put it away, like it's already here, right? So it's how do we embrace it and how do we use it to our advantage? I think it's the
and I think maybe just to wrap up on the awareness training side, we asked a little bit about some of the stuff, and I think Fletus had some good examples of advising people on, how you should or shouldn't use chat prompts and things like that. Is there anything else before we sort of leave the awareness training side of things that people would like to offer as opinions?
I think one more thing, and I think Michelle briefly talked about it. I think awareness managers should use it. I think you should take stuff that you're pulling out of like a ClickArmor or material that you get from other vendors and challenge what the vendor says and see what you can find. Like, can you compare this against this and make it do a comparison for you to see if there's a better way to articulate? Because as I said earlier, I've used it to, for lack of a better term, dumb down a phrase that I'm saying to make it more digestible. So as I'd write this to present this to a student, so it would make it a little, or if I was sharing this with like a kindergartner, just to see how it would take my very technical topic and put it in a term that I think could be digestible, not calling our users ignorant, but like we use terminology different than they would probably digest it. So taking it and being able to say, I want to give this very complex topic. I want to teach you about island hopping. Let me get something that can explain island hopping in a way that makes sense to a user, or supply chain attacks to a user, et cetera, whatever you want to do, and find a way to make it more digestible, because as a technical person, we're going to write it differently than our users are going to digest it.
Awesome. All right. Just going to take a moment to acknowledge ClickArmor, who sponsors this session every 2 weeks, and really hope that people get value out of these discussions. I typically get good feedback on it. So we're looking for your feedback at the end of this session for sure, either in the chat or by message or even by share of something on social. But just wanted to share a little bit about what we do at ClickArmor. We make security awareness training more engaging and effective through gamification. We have a fully gamified platform from top to bottom, and we use things like innovative game mechanics. What you see here is what we call a rat race. And it's really just a visually more appealing kind of quiz. And people kind of go, oh, this is interesting. You know, can I beat the virus to the middle of the square where the guy's working? And, you know, you can answer questions fairly easily and get feedback and earn points. And all of that goes to the leaderboard and really helps motivate people to complete the training quicker. And they will actually, if you put in someone like sacrificial executives in the top of the leaderboard, people will actually go in and redo training to go in and beat them. So really would love to chat with you if you have any ideas or questions about your security awareness training program. I've been teaching security awareness for 15 years, and that's why we built ClickArmor, because I really haven't seen anything built on a learning management system that can engage people the way I believe we need to be engaging employees. So clickarmor.ca is where you go to find that information. All right. The next question is, what are the risks associated with broad adoption of AI? We sort of talked about a few of these things, but you know, I think James posted a quote from Stephen Hawking saying that, you know, humans can be replaced altogether. Is that something that we're all concerned about? I have a concern about it, maybe not complete replacement, but I do have a bit of a doomsday scenario that I'd like to share, but I'll let you guys go first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. We just started a new cohort for the U of T boot camp. 75 students show up day one. They're all eager, happy, excited, like on their journey to become cybersecurity professionals. You know, we get through the first day of orientation and everything like that. We open it up to questions, and the first 3 questions were all around AI and is, you know, will their jobs even still be there by the time they A, finish the course, B, by the time they get to like a position of being promoted, et cetera, et cetera. So now we already have people that are about to enter the industry being afraid that they may not have an ability to operate in the industry. And, you know, we already know how, you know, we have a shortage of critical talent in cybersecurity. And now we're seeing AI discouraging people from potentially going down this road because they're like, well, the computer's going to do it for me. And what am I going to do to be able to compete against that? So I think there's a huge thing here in the education and workforce that the AI could be pushing and scaring people away from actually, you know, getting into it.
Yeah, interesting. Fletus?
I mean, like any technology, I mean, I think about Moore's law all the time. Things do get better. They do get quicker. It's actually faster than what Moore said. It actually doubles quicker than it used to. But at the same time, I think we are still the one creating. At some point, it will learn and probably be able to do a lot of stuff that we do. But the EQ piece, I'm not sure AI is ever going to truly get down the emotional piece of it. Not saying it won't. I just think there's it's going to be times when it's going to share information and not be able to read the room on if this is an appropriate way to take an action. We not on this call, but in the industry have talked about AI driven cars. Like, it has to make a decision if it hits the woman or hits the child, who's going to more likely survive. And a code is making that decision. Who do I hit? What do I hit if I have to hit something? So like, we know it's there today. We know it's evolving. And with AI driven cars and vehicles, et cetera, that's going to continue to be probably where I see this surpassing us, as I do see jobs such as long haul trucks eventually being driven by AI just to save money. I know California is already trying that to take loads up and down its coast by following the interstate path. But that's where I'm at right now. I don't think it's going to take my job away. I think it's just going to remove certain functions from my jobs or from my career field that I'm in.
Cool. Michelle.
Yeah, I agree. But I've seen my freelance fee go down by about $200 because of AI, because of ChatGPT. At the moment, it'll come back. But it's the same. It's the same for I know quite a few people who are freelance journalists, and they've had that issue, which is always the problem. And I think awareness people will probably relate to this, or at least I would hope they would. That often this is a sector, this is an area of security where people really overlook it and they call it soft skills as opposed to critical skills. And writing, creating, relating to people is actually very hard. And it's critical. You try and run a business without it, you're not going to go very far. So yeah, but I'm not worried about it as such doing me out of a job. I think it's entirely possible that certain organizations could go, hey, we're going to get rid of all these functions, and especially customer service, and we'll use that. But I don't think that would go very well. I worked with a company recently where in my last role where everything was AI. It was AI driven solution for this and machine learning that. And ultimately when everything broke down, it was an engineer with a big stick that came around and fixed it. So I don't think we'll have an AI driven future an entirely AI driven future in any future that we'd want to live in, is the only thing I would say.
Interesting.
I'm not saying it's bad, but balance.
For anybody who might be as old as me, not too many on the call, you might remember in the 70s, there was a magazine called Discover. It was a science magazine. It was about an inch thick every issue. And there was an article in there about artificial intelligence I read, and I remember it saying, when artificial intelligence reaches its ultimate potential, we can all become poets and philosophers. So really things to just keep us amused, really. James made an interesting comment. Why don't we talk about photonic AI attacks and the damage it can cause to Western technology without quantum security? Anybody want to take that one on?
Oh yeah, he wants to go right up to the PhD level of the nice light conversation in the afternoon. But I mean, it is a good point. You know, we do often overlook the bigger threats of AI, especially that are coming out of nation states like China, would be the reference here, and how we need to utilize AI and utilize quantum security to be ahead of that. And I think this is kind of what I meant with the tip of the iceberg comment, where yes, we all have access to ChatGPT, but we don't see what's actually going on behind the scenes, or we don't pay attention to it. And all the buzzwords kind of get our focus on, well, will this replace our jobs? Will this do X, Y, and Z? I think there are bigger pictures from kind of a security point of view of how does this actually affect our nation as a whole? How does this affect day-to-day life? And those are the bigger questions I think that are being answered behind the scenes. But I think as people in the industry, we need to be aware of them and how to position, to be ready for it.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things, actually, I just did a recording. I don't know if everybody knows, but I'm also a co-host of a podcast called the Shared Security Podcast with Tom Eston and Kevin Johnson, both of whom I've never met in person, but we've been doing podcasts since 2009. We recorded yesterday a session, and we started talking about, Tom and I were talking about AI, and it really sort of comes to a point where you say, we've done a few episodes on AI and the advancement of things like deep fakes using AI. And my concern actually is that we're going to stop trusting what we see on any media because it could be faked so easily. It's always going to be a cat and mouse game. There's going to be deceptions and detection to try and determine whether something was real or fake. And how do you get some kind of detection technology into the end of your mobile phone earpiece, right? If you're not talking on data, you're just talking on a voice line, nothing's there to protect you from somebody having created a voice that sounds just like somebody that you know. So I kind of have a feeling, even when we're watching the news, do we know who's behind the news? There's a really good, I like this, a British crime drama called The Capture. Have you heard of it, Michelle?
No,
it's actually quite good. It's based on deep fakes, but in real time. So, I mean, my wife's asking me, is that possible? And I'm going, I don't think so yet, but who knows, right?
Well, there's a news anchor in Korea that is AI driven. I just posted a link in the chat, and it's the most famous news anchor in Korea.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to be trusting these people to give our news anyway, but that's why one of my early questions was, do we trust the AI itself based on how it's learned and who runs it and who owns it?
I'd be happy if we trusted things a bit less, though, because I think the critical thinking has gone. I mean, I used to work as a teacher, so I would say that because I have very strong opinions about what we do. But a big piece of what I do isn't just, I'm fed up with having to talk about phishing and please don't click the link because people are fed up with that. But I mean, they know it, they need reminding, don't get me twisted. But like, what people need to learn is, how do I recognize this? How do I know if it's true or not? How do I check it? And what do I do if I'm, who do I trust? And so I think there are actually benefits to that. I'm not saying I want everything auto-generated. And I've done so many talks and things like that, but with like sessions like this, you could take our voices and make a really good deep fake.
Yeah, how do you know we're all real here today? So.
Exactly. I'd look better if I wasn't real, actually. I'd have a much better avatar.
I'd have more hair, I think, but
I'd look like I did when I was 25. That would be good. But yeah, so I think it'd be good if we did more work on misinformation. I certainly think that's something that awareness should be covering. Just where do you go? Because it's not good enough to say don't trust this or trust that. How do I know what I should trust? Where do I go?
It goes back to the simple philosophy that we talk about all the time: trust but verify. I mean, I started this conversation with, does this tone, does this language seem natural? Yes, AI is getting more natural language processing, so that's a different topic. But that's how I can usually pick up a scammer when they call me. This is not a natural dialogue of how this conversation should go, because I have pre-deceived ideas. So I have biases. We're going to go with a bias as a human to how this conversation is supposed to take place. Like, I know how my boss talks to me. I know how my wife talks to me. I know how my kids. So there's going to be ways for me to use the EQ earlier to say, this doesn't seem like the person that I'm used to talking with, through like from a deep fake. I mean, I've seen interviews. I've read stuff similar to what Ryan posted, where people have put deep fakes up to do a video conference interview and it's not them. And there's a lot of processing to do that, but that gets deeper down this process. But it's the trust but verify. I mean, never take it from one source. I mean, it's the thing of gossip. You can't you have to trust and then verify. So
that goes a lot to what I was mentioning before about we all need to have better risk management skills on a personal level. And I think it actually equates to what you're saying, Michelle, critical thinking, right? And what you said, Fletus, can I detect a scenario rather than a technical URL or something, right? Does this even make sense, for that person in that role to be reaching out to me right now? All right. So before we wrap up, I'd actually like anybody in the audience to type in the chat sort of what they got the most out of in this session. Was there anything that one thing that you will take away that you may be able to use or learn in the next day or two or week? Just like to hear what value we're bringing to people. So that's really appreciated. And while we're waiting for that, I will announce that our next session will be next Wednesday, April 5th. At 1 p.m. And hopefully that QR code will get you there and not be malicious. Just created it this morning. So it'll be talking about where should the security awareness function reside in an organization. So we're going a little bit more from the abstract AI stuff into more practical things for security managers to look at, what can we be doing better as an organization to manage the security awareness program. So really hoping that a lot of you will be able to make it back for that. Even if you were just drawn here by the AI side of things, we're welcome to join us again. So with that, any last words? We'll just do a quick roundtable with people and see if there are any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with the audience. We'll start with Ryan and then go to Fletus and Michelle.
Yeah, I just think another great conversation we had, and it's awareness. So let's just keep asking questions. Let's keep learning, and I think we will be just fine. Maybe not trust it so much, but hey, that's outside of our control. Since as cybersecurity professionals, we're the small minority, of the population, so we can do our due diligence, but we need to pass this awareness on to the rest of the people in our communities and our circles, so they feel more comfortable with it, not so scared. And so I think that's kind of where we should position ourselves.
Cool, thanks. Fletus?
Similar to that, as I just talked, trust but verify. Build your cybersecurity habits. What is those habits? To your risk posture you refer to, your risk awareness as an end user. Just think. Use critical thinking. Sometimes we get lazy. Just think for a moment. Stop.
That's it.
Assess.
Sometimes you wonder. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we wonder about, especially in this country, but
everywhere.
But yeah, I would just say that again. Yeah, absolutely. The risk versus the opportunity, but it's both. It's balancing. And I spent some time today looking at making deep fakes of dogs and asking colleagues if they could see the real dog from one of our shows, which is about dogs, but compared to the deep fake dog. And dogs are actually very hard to work out which one is which. People, it's not so difficult, I find. But so there you are. That's something you can play around with this evening if you're interested. Go and ask Bing AI to make you some dogs and see if you can see the real one. So yeah.
Well, thanks so much for that, Michelle, and thank you everybody who joined us from all over the world. Boy, I didn't even get a chance to call people out, but we've got people in Dusseldorf, Germany, which is awesome, as well as the UK. Thanks for joining us, Michelle, and all over Canada and the US. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody back here on Wednesday, April 5th at 1 p.m. For our next chat. So thanks everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.